Good afternoon. This is Father Bruce Wilson at Coastal Bend Community Empowerment, empowering communities to organize around the things that matter to them and that improve their own welfare. And recently I've been privileged to work with a homeless community in Corpus Christi, Texas. And this is an interview today with one of my friends, George Vela, who I met like 3, 4, 5 years ago at Metro Ministries, and he was a case manager, and I was on the job there as a chaplain at Metro Ministries for a little while, and we got to know each other. And I have so much respect for what he did and the way he did it, and I just thought he would be a perfect person to interview on the topic for this video, which is what can be done now? Where can we go from here? And for a little overview on that, maybe we'll just talk first about what are some of the root causes of homelessness? How do people end up homeless? And then we'll pick it up with then what do we do about that? Where do we go from here? That's a huge topic. We'll try to keep it about 20 minutes or close to 20 minutes. But he and I both looked at some of the same material for this interview, and I'm just going to turn it over to him. Can we start, George, with just what are the things that you're aware of that are you call root causes of homelessness? And I'm just going to hand him the phone.
Hi guys, this is George. As Father Bruce just
introduce yourself.
Announced, and I've got I got a little over 2 decades of experience working with the homeless population, both with men, women, adults, children, just about every single type of capacity you can probably think of. But when we're looking and talking about the root causes, you're definitely looking at trauma, either as a child or as an adult or an adolescent. And what you see on the streets sometimes is pretty common when it comes to mental health or substance abuse, being released from incarceration. Even probably about 5 years ago, the juvenile youth population homelessness was increasing because of their decisions on their sexual preferences, and it just wasn't acceptable to a lot of those family members. So besides mental health and substance abuse, natural disasters, being released from an incarcerated facility, it goes much deeper than that when it comes to trauma and the why. So really it's the why. And when we're in relation to substance abuse, that is just a symptom of the problem. So, a lot of people do things in the privacy of their own home. Unfortunately, these people don't have the privacy of their own home. So this is why you see so many people behaviors on the streets the way it is. Back to Father Bruce.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Well, so I'm glad you mentioned trauma. I was going to suggest that I know there's catastrophic events that happen, economic traumas, medical traumas. Catastrophes, economic catastrophes, medical catastrophes, things that put people on the street temporarily. But the one thing that I see as a root cause of nearly 90, maybe 99% of the homelessness I see has a root cause of trauma. Even you mentioned addiction as being a symptom of the trauma. They're self-medicating. I think even a lot of the mental health diagnoses are really just extensions of the trauma. They're trauma-driven. When you talk about PTSD, you talk about anxiety, depression, even bipolar. I think a lot of that's just trauma-driven mental illness. And when you can deal with the trauma, then the mental illness begins to subside. Mental illness is treated with medication. Trauma is more difficult to treat. There's not a prescription for trauma. And so really that leads right into this talk, which is, so what can we do? What can we do to help people who have experienced chronic trauma when they were growing up? Could have been one traumatic event that just impacted them the rest of their life. Usually it's, I think you were talking about this actually when you mentioned trauma in the context of families or family systems. But anyway, most of the trauma that I see is a result of chronic trauma. Now, just to be clear, that doesn't mean that they were all like being sexually abused or physically abused or medically abused. Trauma can be anything. One person's trauma is not another person's trauma. It's an event, or it's a pattern, or it's a culture, but it's also the way that person interprets that event, how they perceive that event. So it's the event, it's the interpretation of the experience of the event, and it's the long-term impacts. All of those things go together to actually define trauma. And so it's not like they had terrible parents. They could have had great parents who just emotionally neglected them, and they don't even realize that happened. But parents who loved them, put them through school, took care of them, they just were not emotionally available. That's enough to create an attachment trauma. Anyway, trauma, I think, is probably at the root of a lot of the symptoms, and homelessness is one of those symptoms of trauma. It's a medical issue that has its roots in trauma. So what can you do about trauma? If trauma happens when a person feels so threatened, so unsafe, that their experience of that is that it's a life and death situation, and that the lion is just going to come eat me, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it. And the feeling of being unsafe, unprotected, undefended in the face of something that's overwhelming that's the condition that creates trauma. So how do we get people out of trauma? That's what I'd like to talk about with George. What can be done? Where do we go from here?
From a case management perspective, we are trained and conditioned to encourage counseling, seeking guidance through a mental health profession. And some of those staff members, treatment specialists, are gonna prescribe certain medications to try to help with the past trauma, the current trauma. But so many different things can happen in a person's life that can cause trauma, or certain triggers as well. A death of a family member can cause somebody to just change dramatically with the brain chemistry. A divorce, a separation, a loss of a child, being a witness to a heinous crime, being a victim of a heinous crime, a loss of a job. There's so many different things. Being in a car accident and having a brain injury, and sometimes you're just never going to be the same. So different people experiencing different types of circumstances in their life could cause something very traumatic, and they're just not able to deal with some of those things sometimes, versus somebody else that can, let's say, just get fired from a job and just be okay with that and bounce back like it was nothing wrong with that. But meeting people where they're at and getting to understand them and their experience, and having empathy, and so almost like being able to relate to that. All those are important factors when it comes to getting down to like root causes of the why. Why is this person in this situation now? What happened back then? or what is still happening, and moving forward. Because sometimes when I see homeless people still to this day, they're still carrying that pain with them. It's almost like they're still living back then and not able to recover from that. Even when it comes to like a separation, I've met hundreds of clients too, like in back child support that they think they're never just going to be able to climb out of, and that could be another reason as well. So it varies for everybody, and it's so easy for the community and the public to assume that, oh, they don't want to be in a house, they'd rather be homeless, they're on the influence of alcohol, they're drugs, they're a drug addict, they're just a drunk. It wasn't always like that. It wasn't always like that for a lot of these people, a lot of these folks. I've worked with clients that have had master's degrees, that were doctors, attorneys, Major League Baseball players, professional wrestlers. Their life wasn't homeless, but something happened to them that caused them to get into this situation. And unfortunately, for some of these people, it continues to spiral or stay in that same rut of homelessness, where they're bouncing around from shelter to shelter, family member and friends, and to the point where they even burn bridges sometimes with family and friends. And some of those family members, say, well, I'm going to give you a cell phone. If you want to see me or hear from me, you can call me, but don't come around. And that's, unfortunately, that's the reality. And a lot of these people too, in some cases, do have an income. They've got the Social Security disability income. They maybe have some VA income coming in, Social Security disability income coming in as well. But without the proper and appropriate resources to get people into affordable housing or subsidized housing, they're going to continue to be in that cycle and still be out on the streets, visible to everybody. It's more affordable to put somebody into an apartment than keeping them out on the streets, where they're constantly in the hospital, they're getting in and out of jails. It's a huge financial burden on everybody that's paying taxes, etc. But there's a lot to it. There's always a lot to it.
It's complicated. You know what? I want to get right down to just quickly the housing part, but I want to reference a couple of things you just said about how it affects their brain chemistry. Trauma actually reconfigures a part of the brain. We call it the amygdala. Let's call it the trauma brain. And when the trauma brain has been reconstructed, reconfigured through trauma, it number one, it has a tendency to take over the analytical brain, the rest and digest brain, the prefrontal cortex that makes decisions, that reasons things out. When the trauma brain hijacks that front part of your brain, it's like you're really just functioning with half a brain. When you're triggered, when something triggers your old trauma, you're not working with your full brain anymore. You are overwhelmed by the trauma because you don't remember trauma, you re-experience trauma. It's like, oh, that lion is coming to get me right now. And you're experiencing it all over again. So you move into fight or flight. You move into survival mode. And so now, how do you help someone come out of survival mode? So you referenced, you just begin to talk about housing. And there's a term, housing first, which is, if you want to help people, put them in a house, and then begin to do the case management, then begin to do the support systems that they need to recover from trauma, to recover from addiction, to get a job. All those things are ridiculously difficult while they're still in the street. You can hardly actually be successful at any of those things when you're on the street. But when you're in a house, number one, you're not worried about getting stabbed. You're not worried about getting your backpack stolen again with all your documents and your medication, and you feel safe. And if being unsafe, if being threatened in a way that overwhelmed you is what creates trauma, either a chronic trauma or an event that made you that you can't forget, if being unsafe is what creates trauma, reconfigures your brain, and puts you into a loop of being in fight or flight survival mode, then what I think is that being safe, first of all, having just your body safe, but having a safe person like George, a safe person is maybe the first step, but immediately after that is a safe place where your whole body is safe. If you're physically unsafe, so this is kind of a crude example, but I know what physically. Let's say just if I need to go use the restroom. You know what? My capacity to focus, to concentrate, to think about the things that I need to work on is diminished because I've got to go to the restroom. If you're in trauma, you can't focus and concentrate on the things that you need to do. All you can experience is the trauma. That's what's going on in your brain, right? But when I get a chance to go to the restroom, it's like a person with trauma actually being in a home again, being in a safe place with a safe person and a safe place. I think if we can help people with trauma finally begin to feel safe enough, they can begin to recover and their brain can begin to reconfigure. There's a lot of other tools and techniques for helping people to reconfigure their brain again to the way it was when they were born, when we were children. Before we're traumatized, our brain works one way, a trauma brain works a different way, but we can reprogram it to be like we were born and to feel safe again. And so that's how I'm putting together the things that I just heard you say, George, and why I think housing first, not treatment first, not housing readiness. Treatment first is let's get them well and then put them into a house. Why? Because how do you even do that if they're not in a house? How do you help them with all those things? And housing readiness, like I don't know if they're ready for a house. What do you mean they're not ready for a house? Everybody's ready for a roof over their head and a lock on their door. They may not be ready to stop using their substances that they're self-medicating with. Maybe not. That's a different issue. They're ready for a house. They're ready to be safe. So I just want to hook housing and safety together. I don't know. What do you think?
Housing first. It has to come first. The first thing you do in the morning when you wake up, or at least me, I get up, I have to go to the restroom, I have to brush my teeth. If I'm homeless, where am I gonna do that? When I'm done brushing my teeth, when I'm done using the restroom, then I gotta get ready for work. I go to my closet, I get my clothes, I pick up my wardrobe. If I'm homeless, I don't have a closet, I don't have a wardrobe. And then I make breakfast in my kitchen. If I'm homeless, I don't have a kitchen. You can't do that without housing first. Housing must come first, and then you prep for the day. You can't prep without a house. You can't get ready without a house first. Everything is housing first. Then you leave the house to go take care of your job related issues, etc. And then when you're done with your job, you come back home. But if I don't have that, what do I have? What do you have?
There you go. I just like to say that you can't treat trauma while people are still in trauma. If trauma put them on the street, living on the street is still trauma. You can't help people out of trauma while they're still in trauma. So put them in a house. Let's just get people into a damn house. Housing first. I guess that's the whole point of this one interview. What can we do? we can get people into housing. Any parting thoughts?
Housing is the root first. You plant the house and then you watch people grow. Housing first.
George, thank you a lot. Appreciate everything that you're doing. Well, when I knew you, what you were doing with our homeless community, and now what you're doing for the students at the school in Mathis. Is it elementary school or?
It's middle school.
Middle school. For the middle school, those middle school kids are lucky. Thank you, George. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for listening.